If you are making content for your Google Ads business and talking about CPCs and what you're seeing in your accounts all day, and you're hearing absolutely 100% crickets, please don't worry. I gotcha. I own the land of crickets. In fact, not only do I own the land of crickets and YouTube videos that don't see the light of day and Instagrams that go nowhere and content that is just all over the place. If there were a trophy for that, I would own it. I've done that because I like to make content and I just sometimes will just make what's on my heart. So, all that said, I want to talk about metrics today and sort of what happens as your content starts getting traction. And I actually have two phenomenal stories to illustrate this. And I actually made a video on this probably I don't know, I feel like it was probably like 6 months or a year ago, where I said, I am a full-time content creator and I make $15,000 a year. And literally, I stopped making content on this channel because of it, because it felt like incredibly self-indulgent. And it felt like something I wasn't able to necessarily prove out. It was just like, oh, well, you just have to believe me. So I don't know. I stopped making content about that. But today, what I want to talk about is sort of my journey and then something profound that happened the other day that I think is going to illustrate this point a little better than something where I just tell you I make a ton of money doing content. So in any case, when I first started my business, I obviously had tremendous friends around me who've been working in Google Ads for forever. And they said, you have to get the content engine running. You have to get it running. Just because you're a great PPCer doesn't mean people know about you, doesn't mean that people know that you do this on the side. And so, man, I got that content engine running. I started making TikToks. I started on Instagram. I was always in LinkedIn. I talked about that all the time. That has been my main primary platform. I, of course, was blogging for search engine land. I'm trying to think. I was guesting on podcasts. I mean, I talk about this, right? I talk about it in all my video, but I just put content out like an absolute beast. That being said, I always was getting comments in my DMs where people would say, your content is so great. Your content is so great. But if you'd look at the metrics, maybe at best, I would see 100 views on something. I would say my LinkedIn definitely had a phenomenal reach, but then I started to get clients out of it. So it's just really interesting how it works, where if you looked at the metrics on the outside, they looked absolutely terrible, nothing to brag about, probably because I compare myself to major influencers. But then I was getting business, so it was working, and the people are telling me they liked it. And then as a result of liking my content, I was getting opportunities. So it just worked in this really weird manner that I couldn't necessarily put a finger on, unlike, in a Google Ads account when it's kind of crystal clear. Just kidding. We all know the attribution is around for a reason because it's not always clear in data and in marketing. But hey, I digress. So in any case, that is sort of my personal story. But then something happened the other day that I think is worth noting. And I am absolutely taking this video and immediately sending it to the person that I'm going to be referring to in this video today. Oh yeah, of course, I took a little notes to stay on track, but you guys know me. I abandon my notes the second I get into something. Okay, so a few months ago, I took what I'm going to just call it a mini coaching call, right? So I spoke to someone who had been following me for a while. This person reached out and said, oh my gosh, I binge watched all your content and I really want to talk to you because, we had this in common. We have something in common, which is actually a really cool thing to have in common, but I'll get to that in a different video. In any case, this person reached out to me and said, I love what you're doing. I eventually am thinking about leaving my agency job, but I just don't know how to get started. I would like to start making content, but I'm worried that what do I even do? How do I make content? This was an incredibly intelligent, driven human being. And I know this person is smart because they've continued to go and post content, and I see it constantly and always interact with it. So they were kind of asking me for my advice, and I gave it to them. I said, and this is what I would tell any single person in that situation. So if you don't want to have a call with me or join the cohort that I've been putting together, I will just tell it to you. Just start making content. I do not care where you are. I do not care what it says. I do not care if it has been said again. Just say it. For the love of God, don't use AI in it. Just say it from your perspective. Be like, hey, I was working with this client and blah, blah, blah. Just say it. That is the first step, and it gets you over that, like, absolute initial fear. And frankly, I post, like I said, almost every day. The past couple weeks, I've been posting a couple times a week because I've been leaning more into my client stories and my coaching stories for my Google Ads content, and I just don't have the volume of coaching stories because obviously I'm not coaching 50 people a week, but I just am trying different tips and tricks and tools and testing some of my content myself, which as a content creator, that is what I should always be doing, is testing to see, what's really resonating with the audience at this time, which let me just tell you is shifting because it used to be like how-to content did really well, but it now seems like AI has sort of taken that role of boring and you just need to put like a whole new level of humanity in your content. Hey, we grow and evolve. I take this mini coaching call and, I gave my advice, right? Like, just post, just keep posting, like, I don't know, Nemo and swimming, right? And so again, this person took my advice and I see this person's content on LinkedIn. And like I said, I always interact with it. I think I already said this. So of course now I'm already off track. And in any case, the whole influencer list comes out. And as a result, like I've just been talking to a lot of people on the list. And yesterday I was having a long conversation with another influencer. And the other influencer, who obviously has like, I'm just going to say like bigger metrics in general compared to the person who just started putting out content, more followers, more clout, agency owner, said, oh my gosh, have you heard of so-and-so? And I was like, absolutely. I had a little mini coaching session with her and encouraged her to get started. And then she was like, yeah, I've been noticing her content. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Like I was part of that. I was part of that journey of encouraging her to get started. But I think the takeaway from this isn't really like, oh yeah, Sarah like gave her the courage to start. Sorry, I'm opening up my script so I don't get lost. My takeaway isn't like, I got this person started. Like, I'm not that all about me. But my takeaway here is actually similar to the experience that I talked about earlier in this video about how when I was making content, the metrics didn't look great, but I was starting to get tons and tons of clients and tons of like private comments about how good my content was. But I didn't have this massive follower count. I didn't have comments and I didn't have sort of those like vanity metrics to prove it other than just paying clients, which was vanity enough for me. So in any case, as we start talking about this person that's putting out content, I just sort of pause and I'm thinking, she's probably sitting at home looking at her metrics, questioning her sanity. Now, clearly, since she's continued to go, she probably doesn't question it each day. And I love, love, love that she believes in the process and has kept going. But every single content creator, especially when you're making something like Google Ads content that has been said a million times before, we all look at those metrics. We all get defeated. We all think there's no way this could possibly be working because I'm not reinventing the wheel here. But the reality is the fact that an agency owner, somebody that could clearly hire her for an audit or for freelance, who is established, notices her content, tells me it's working. People are starting to notice her in the industry. And that is exactly the point of content, to be noticed in the industry, to get the referrals, to get people talking about you, to get sort of that initial boost, to get the speaking engagements, to get the articles, to get things going for yourself and your personal brand. That is how we get the clients rolling in. And so for me, this is what I essentially call dark social. And maybe someone's called it that before because it sounds really like something somebody said before. So who knows? But really what it is that the most important part of business and social happens in the DMs and the private conversations. It doesn't necessarily happen when it comes to closing deals in that comment section. That's where a lot of industry folk hang out. But the decision makers and the people that you've impacted with your content, That happens privately. It's like, "Hey, have you heard of so and so?" Or I'm gonna go ahead and Google their agency name or their name and read a little bit more content. It's all behind the scenes. Because your true customers, they're not necessarily engaging. They're lurking and trying to figure out what that next step is. And so if you're sitting on the sidelines and you wanna build your PPC business and your influence maybe before you quit an agency or just to get more leads and not have to leave your house and ever talk to too many people, then just make the content, okay? Like, I'm telling you, it works. It worked in my experience. Worked in this other person's experience. And you don't need to invent a new type of PPC or some radical campaign setup or have something absolutely state of the art to say. I mean, I think every now and then I will say things like that, but I don't know if it's necessarily because I'm inventing something. It's because I'm saying it a little bit differently or presenting something that happened to me and how I implemented a tactic in a little bit of a different way. Because really, what you're doing when it comes to being a content creator is operating from your own DNA. Your voice, your tone of voice, the way you word things, the way you talk about things, the way you bring in what happened with your client. Those are very unique parts of your content. It's not, what is a CTR, right? What is a conversion rate? Why we shouldn't care about impressions and clicks and why we should care about conversions. We all know that. But what happened to your client when you got them to stop thinking about the vanity metrics and moving over to a more conversion based approach? What happened? How did that conversation go? How did they react to it? It's that type of stuff that really works. So, to my mini coaching person that I influenced, congratulations. You're starting to break through. And I am beyond proud of you. And for my audience that's listening to this video, if you're sitting on the sidelines and thinking like, I cannot possibly make content for Google Ads, everything has been said before. I don't want to be one of those people. Or, I'd rather pout online and complain about the influencer list. Then guess what? We are all ahead of you because we're not afraid of zero engagement. We've had zero engagement. Like I said, I am the queen of zero engagement and low views and low metrics. But at the end of the day, your clients are watching, your peers are watching, and your bank account needs you because the opportunities are happening in the background and they're all happening where you probably can't see them. So don't stop making content because the applause is quiet. Don't not start because you're afraid of what you're not going to see, because we've been there. I've been there, and I experienced the breakthrough, as did my person who went ahead and binge watched my content and set up time with me. So thank you so much for listening. If you made it to the end of this video, well, as always, I hope I can piece it together. And I love, love, love that I'm building out this passion project of mine, which is the Google Ads Content Lab, which I always have to glance up because I can't even remember the name of my channel at this point. And I hope you subscribe. I hope you follow along, and I hope maybe I gave someone somewhere the courage to start or the courage to keep going when their metrics look like puke, because I've been there. Also, I mentioned it before, I am starting a mini cohort. If that is something you're interested in, if you want to lock in and create content and just grow your influence and make the leads roll in so you do not have to leave the house or get out of your pajamas and you can do Google Ads just the way you like it, then please reach out and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy content creation.